talked before about Jubilee and how they tend to, um, they tend to stack the deck a certain way when they do their middle ground segments, where they talk about how a given, when they take two sides of a story and they take people on the different sides, they often stack the deck. So you've got like prominent media trained figures on one side and virtual nobodies on the other. Probably the biggest example would have been like the Me Too episode with Sydney Watson and a bunch of other nobodies, or there was one Blair White was on, and again, pretty much nobody's on the other side. Anthony Bryan Logan has been on one. So they tend to bring out these conservative figures for the Me Too. Now, I haven't watched this, but this is an interesting topic. Should we defund the police? Middle ground. So let's take a look. Before we even get into it, let's take a look at their. Uh, Holy shit! They only have a link to one person, so maybe they didn't stack the deck this time. And this person has 189 followers. So and I'm assuming by what we're seeing here, he's probably a supporter of Black Lives Matter. Yeah. Maybe a little militant about it. That's cool. That's nice. Let's get into it. Jubilee, take it away.
Hey guys, real quick, we want to give you a heads up. This video has some imagery as well as some sounds of violence from the recent protests, so just be warned. We also want to let you know there is a podcast out now that you can listen to about the protests, and tomorrow we will be releasing a follow-up episode, July 4th, exploring the idea of whiteness, and I will be talking to my family about how they are perceiving this moment. So give it a listen. Thank you for watching, and stay safe.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid when I see the police every single time because I don't know what that interaction is going to lead to.
The main entrance to the police station is now in flames.
Got together police officers and protesters to spark a discussion about the respective.
I'm 28 years old. I'm a police officer in Michigan.
So, credit where credit's due. 2/3 of the group here are POCs, which is probably good for this discussion because we'll get not only their perspective on the situation, but also their perspective. I'm assuming at least one of these POCs is the police officer because they usually do 3 and 3. So credit where credit's due. This is some good representation here. And again, it seems like mostly these are regular people, so we aren't going to see necessarily a lot of the kind of rhetoric that we often see when they have media figures on here. So let's see who they got.
I've been doing this for 4 years.
My name is Gloria. I'm with the Youth Justice Coalition based in LA, and I'm 24 years old.
My name is Dorian, 30 years old, from Compton, California. I'm a peace officer.
My name is Will. I'm 42 years old. I'm a former police officer. I did that for about 18 years.
My name is Ethan. I'm 19 years old. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm a junior supply chain management major from D. Howard University.
So my name's Hennessy. I am 22 years old. I'm from New York City, and I'm just a simple protester.
Turn your camera off if this is not true for you. I've witnessed police brutality.
So I know all three of these are probably going to go dark. He said he's a former police officer. I'm going to guess he's going to go dark. But I don't know about the other two. We'll see how honest they are. Wow. I was completely
it's
wrong.
happened more than one time, and the two times that it's happened, it's been because I've been pulled over because I've been with my friends that have like tattoos, and just like being told to get on the ground, like just listening to the officers.
Sorry, I misunderstood the question, but for some reason I interpreted going dark as they've seen it because I'm dumb or something. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Demands and still being pushed to the ground, but also seeing officers get really upset if you begin to like ask for an attorney or a lawyer.
I mean, when I was attending the Indianapolis protest for Drayshawn Reed, when after the protest, when I was going to my car, I was seen by 4 officers, but I see my car, so my car over here across the street. So I'm just like, excuse me, officers, like there was about 4 of them. So I was like, I'm trying to get to my car.
Right, yeah. I for some reason that got crossed in my mind as Eli. The best Oni-chan, the truth is, um, the origin of my name is kind of stupid. When I was in college, I got the nickname Pope because of my real name. And after college, I met some friends who called me Jupiter because I'm a large ball of gas. So I decided to put the two together for my online alias. It's as simple as that.
And they were like, no, go home. And one of them pushed me, which I seen as unnecessary. So I did push them back, which is something I shouldn't have done. Now I look at it, but like me getting pushed back and then getting pepper sprayed, I seen that as, kind of overuse of force.
Growing up, my best friend was Hispanic and had cousins that were troublemakers in gangs. So on a few occasions, the gang squad in the city I grew up in would pull us over, pull everybody out, kind of manhandle us. There was another time where it's not excessive force, but I was a victim of a robbery, and I knew the suspect, and I was, a juvenile, and made a police report, and nothing ever came of it. So just
That's not police brutality. That's police not responding to your crime, which is very common. The number of, anecdotally, the number of reports I've heard of people who were assaulted, robbed, raped, what have you, who called the police and the police took down some information and then completely failed to follow up on it is astronomical. As a common meme I've seen goes around here, police can identify a partial image of a T-shirt, identify it back to an Etsy store, and use that the purchase from that Etsy store to find a Facebook profile to find who I think it was someone who vandalized a police vehicle or something like that. I don't remember the exact uh, uh, context of that situation, but do all that proves that when it comes to robberies and what have you, it's not that they can't, it's just that they don't want to help them. And part of this is due to overwhelming demand. Everything the police are responsible for means that they're often very stretched thin, even despite the absurd budgets they enjoy in most municipalities. Like that's one thing I will grant. Police are often quite stretched thin, which is why maybe we should redistribute some of their responsibilities to people more equipped to handle them.
remembering that when I got older and became a police officer that you want to be treated fairly, and you also have to treat people fairly.
Notice how he has that attitude and is a former police officer. Again, most good police officers stop being police officers one way or the other pretty quickly. I don't know how long he was a police officer, but I don't know if he said earlier, but this is very common, unfortunately.
So I've never witnessed it, but I've been in plenty of situations where there's a dog pile on the ground. You have to apprehend somebody. It's a lawful arrest, and they want to put up a fight. But if I ever see anything where someone's continuing to apply pressure or give a knee or something, push them away. Say, hey, we're good. We got him in custody, and that's the end of it. And the George Floyd case is huge. You see those officers just standing around. I don't understand why none of them ripped that guy off his back.
This is more a question for the officers. Do you approve of some of the crowd control tactics that you've seen in the videos of these protests?
Ooh, this should be
We
a
are
good
okay
question.
with your First Amendment right to protest. That's what this country is built on. But you do have provocateurs, you do have agitators in the crowd. To me, it just doesn't seem like everything is always peaceful, no matter what, and then it just goes to shit. So I don't know. I'm okay with some, but I'm not okay with others.
I don't know, as a protester, I'm just not sure if for any protest, even if it gets a little more like loud and
He ignores that a lot of those provocateurs and agitators are themselves police. Like, that's a big issue we had, especially early in the protest, was police officers disguising themselves as protesters and then provoking or agitating. Or the other issue we've run into are far right people getting into these protests and trying to agitate or provoke issues. I remember a video I saw a few weeks ago of a streamer who was walking down the street with a bunch of other protesters and turned to someone and was like, "Hey, do you think you could flip over that truck?" And everyone around was like, "No, why would you ask us to do that? That's crazy. Why would we do that? We wouldn't that's crazy." And he had to run. Dude had to run. It was funny as fuck.
I guess a little.
Loud is not a problem. Chaos is the problem.
I just don't know if it's like appropriate to use tear gas or rubber bullets. Tear gas can actually kill someone. It agitates asthma, and rubber bullets can cause serious damage.
It can kill someone even if they don't have asthma. There was the one girl. I'm so horrible with names. I apologize. Just in general, that I don't know names here. But there was the one girl who was caught. Basically, there was a protest. Police decided to shut it down, but prevented people from leaving, and she was trapped in an area that was heavily hit with tear gas, and she died as a result. A lot of people tried to spread misinformation that she was uh, asthmatic, and that's why she died. But then it turned out no, she wasn't asthmatic. She had a set of normal, healthy lungs and still died as a result of the tear gas. So, and there's also the fact that, from what I understand, tear gas is against the Geneva Convention. So it's not something you can use in wartime, but apparently it's okay for peace officers to use in times of protest, allegedly.
Depending on where you hit, it made one woman go blind. You know what I mean? I just don't know if that's like appropriate.
I'm perfectly okay with that. My only problem is, give me a solution. What other things do you think that we should do as opposed to that, minus de-escalating? Because de-escalation requires cooperation. If I'm telling you, hey, let's bring it down, you're not listening to me, then it's not effective, right? Because we have to maintain order. That is kind of my that's my profession, that's my job.
Looting and destruction of property are acceptable parts of protesting.
I
Yeah.
think it is acceptable. And I know I'll be challenged for this at every single stage, but I think that one, we need to recognize that we're on stolen land. Two, we need to recognize that folks that have been completely robbed and stolen from their land, their people, their roots. And I think that what people need to really, instead of focusing and putting all that hate on people that are looting, think about what caused all that anger.
Yeah, looting and destruction of property are basically the only ways many of these groups of people who have been disempowered and disenfranchised by the system have of getting the system to pay attention to them. It's not a matter of, granted, there's definitely been some looting, some destruction of property that is just either people taking their taking grudges or frustrations out on uh, people, right or wrong targets. I'm not getting into that, but not for good reasons. Or people just trying to discredit the movement by destroying property where there is protesting. But we can also point out that the destruction of property in Minneapolis and other places has gotten results. Destroying the Minneapolis precinct, burning it down, got Minneapolis to rethink the way they're doing policing in that city. So, while I do think that it is something which has to be used in very specific ways, looting, destruction of property can be effective means of protest.
So when I went to my protest, it was really peaceful until like about like 9 or 10. That's when you see people like starting to throw stuff at buildings. And it really is people are just mad and people are frustrated. They're trying to get their anger out. And you will see destruction and you will see violence because people are tired of being unheard. And it's not something I condone, but it's something that will happen because of this. People that do it also, a lot of the times looters just be trying to hit licks. I gotta be honest. I see people that just like, take advantage of the situation that people are like breaking in and stuff, be like, oh, I'm about to go hit that bank real quick. I'm about to hit that store real quick. So for black people out there, please do not loot because they're gonna put you as the thugs and they're gonna make it seem like you're the bad guy at the end of the day. When white people loot, they're gonna call them employees and Antifa. When black people loot or black people rob, they're gonna call us thugs. And it just feeds into the racist narrative that in turn is just gonna come and just make us look worse.
There's a lot of people who don't understand the struggle of black community. They don't understand how life is living in an inner city. I didn't. I grew up in a suburb and it was like 98% white. I was very sheltered. But I'll say for all the people who are sheltered out there, and it's probably the vast majority of America, it's going to be really hard for them to sympathize and empathize with the Black Lives Matter movement when they start seeing looters, when they start seeing buildings burning. They're just going to think, oh, wow, like you guys are acting ridiculous. But your voice is very powerful.
It's important for folks to remember that this is not a moment, this is a movement. Folks are uprising because they're tired and sick and tired of the same things happening over and over.
Yeah, as I said, voices are very powerful. Getting your message out there is very powerful and useful. But a lot of people just won't listen to it. I mean, just look at mainstream news. There's hardly any coverage of the ongoing protests that are happening in Minneapolis, in LA, all over. There's still ongoing protests, but no one is paying attention to them because they're not burning, they're not looting. I'm not saying that they need to start doing that again. What I'm saying is that it's a way to get attention. And when you're trying to make waves, when you're trying to change things, attention is how you do it. And that's one of the powers of social media is that we're able to get things out that the mainstream media doesn't want to cover.
Over and over again, right? Looting might not be right, right? But like I said, if it's not right, what about when folks were enslaved? What about all the gold that was taken? What about all these things? What about the land, right? So no, I do stand in solidarity with folks that are doing the looting, that are doing the uprisings, that are in the protests, because there's layers to this.
The
And I
recent
also want to touch on what this gentleman said about black people don't loot because it just plays into the narrative. He's definitely not wrong there. Black people looting will be seen as just thugs stealing whatever they want, go into that narrative. That being said, when it comes to destruction of property and looting, you need to pick your targets. Yes, burning the Target in Minneapolis was a statement, but they were pretty easily they pretty easily spun that into just looters, doing what they want. But when they burned the police precinct, that was a message. So that's an important thing is when it comes to direct action, when it comes to these acts like this, you need to there needs to be some thought put into the targets, and you can't just you know go all willy-nilly hitting everyone and everything, especially since although it's a shrinking segment, but there's a good chance that the small shop or store you hit is a regular person's entire livelihood, not some rich millionaire billionaire's third or 50th property. It's actually someone's, they depend on that to continue living. So and this question should be interesting because we've actually seen evidence that it's not spreading COVID-19 because the protesters are wearing masks.
protests are risking lives and likely spreading COVID-19.
At the end of the day, you gotta see it for what it is, and it is a whole lot of people standing together. Even though I do see as a just cause, and I went to protest myself, I think it's a just cause, and I'm doing right for my people. But at the end of the day, you just gotta see it for what it is, and it could potentially spread COVID. Just as Trump rallies can spread COVID, just as people opening their businesses can spread COVID, just as people opening restaurants can spread COVID.
I get it. I understand the protests. I understand why people are tired. I understand that people are tired of being tired. So, I mean, if it's a risk they're willing to take, by all means. And you, at the end of the day, will reap the consequences or the benefits of your decision.
Of course, most, you can probably likely to get sick from COVID-19, but there are also people giving out PPE, and they're encouraging everyone to wear masks. And a lot of protests, even though it doesn't tend to happen, they do advertise, hey, can you stay 6 feet apart? That'd be great. I would rather fight for something I believe in and die for what I believe in.
People want to always shut down people power, and they always want to make sure that we're like, oh, now it's like it's your fault, you all are making sure that the pandemic is thriving. No, let's look at it as a whole. Let's look at how law enforcement officers are not wearing any masks, right? And I saw it firsthand because when I was arrested again, the officers doing intake, the officers doing processing, the officers on the bus were not wearing any masks. And when we asked them, why are you not wearing a mask? We're wearing masks. And they were like, oh, we're 6 feet apart from you all. No, you're not. You're asking me where my number is to book me. So let's look at that, and let's also bring that out to the media too.
Hold on. One thing. I don't wear a mask. When I'm going on duty, I don't wear a mask. And that's my personal choice. I am also not going to look at you and say, hey, you over there, why are you not wearing a mask?
This is ignoring the fact that masks are not to protect you, it's to protect everyone else. Again, the whole point of the mask is to prevent you from spreading any particulates you might be carrying. So, by not wearing a mask, you're not saying, I'm not worried, I'm only worried about myself. I'm taking risk. No, you are only worrying about yourself. You don't care if anyone else gets sick because you might be an asymptomatic carrier, especially someone with a public job where you're out in public dealing with people all the time, like a police officer is. It just boggles my mind that these people just don't get why wearing a mask is a good thing.
Mask. Why? I'm not going to do that. That is your personal choice. That is you. I do know that I've seen people try to switch the narrative, but that's from the media. That's not normal people. Media is not normal people. Most normal people are not going to be complaining that you don't have a mask.
No, I perfectly understand that. I'm just saying that a lot of people watch the media, and so then they'll portray these protests, right, very different. And so, just like you said, right, you don't wear a mask, right? That's fine. I do think you should wear a mask for your safety because it is a pandemic, and to me, it is real. And I want to respect other people's space and other people's opinions. I do want to make sure that I had a mask just to keep people safe.
Law enforcement in the US has become too militarized.
Yeah, I'm guessing he's gonna stay lit up, and I'm guessing these three are too. This is not even really a debate. Oh wow.
One or two things need to occur. There needs to be reform, or there needs to be a demilitarization. A lot of these instances occur because police have using their firearm unjustly. So let's take the case of Rashard Brooks, for example. It all started because he was asleep at a McDonald's. It was something so light that ended with him getting shot in the back. You see what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's like, why do these things get escalated so much where these things have to occur, where lethal force has to occur? You could have chased him, you could have found him later. Like at the end of the day, there's other ways around it other than lethal force.
Also, in the Rashard Brooks case, him getting away, what does that mean? Literally, the only thing he had done was drunk driving. I'll fully, grant that he had apparently been operating his vehicle while drunk, and then he passed out in the drive-thru of a Wendy's. Like, at worst, you've got him for the civil crime of operating a vehicle while intoxicated. So he gets away. You'd already, as far as I am aware, they'd already identified him. They already had his ID. They definitely had his fucking car. So, you know, that's the thing. These police are so drunk with power that they can't stand the idea of someone who broke the law getting away, even if they didn't harm anyone. Again, I grant you, drunk driving is one of those things where just because he hadn't hurt someone doesn't mean he wouldn't. I'm not defending drunk driving here. What I am saying is that the fact that the police thought that it was acceptable to shoot him rather than let him get away because he fell asleep in a parking lot drunk just speaks to the mindset of at the very least the police in Atlanta, if not police in general.
I wanted to go back to what Dorian was bringing up around like what do we do? Maybe if officers weren't killing people, maybe that would be a solution. Maybe if an LA County LAPD wouldn't have killed around 900 people, right? 900 individuals. And when we're talking about over militarization of law enforcement, why is it that there's a helicopter, that you all have SWAT? What type of guns do you all have? All the weapons that you all carry, what's really necessary? Because tax dollars are paying for that.
Maybe we need to clarify what militarization means, right? Because you say that, what weapons are you guys using, right? There are 3 deadly weapons in my vehicle at one time: my service pistol, my shotgun, and my rifle. The other tools that I have are tools that I'm going to use so somebody doesn't end up dying. So my taser, pepper spray, my baton. Granted, can we be trained better? Absolutely. I don't train that often. I should. But when you say that it's over militarized, I'm not understanding what that means. I don't use military weapons.
So, what is your service rifle? Is that an AR-15 or a weapon like that was designed for the military? Do you use military grade body armor? How about the other equipment that you don't specifically use but is available to the police department, such as tanks or bobcats, whatever the fuck they're called, and machinery like that? And that's ignoring that the training you do receive is basically the uh, a professional Call of Duty player's idea of military training, where it's just you are the only thing standing between the good sheep of the world and the wolves who want to tear down that world, and you need to make sure that you're able to kill at will. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about militarization. It's not just the equipment, although the equipment is a big part of it. It's also the mindset and training that police receive, or rather, the lack of training they receive. The amount of training that police officers receive in America is laughably small. Somewhere in the neighborhood of what have I seen? Something like 500 to 700 hours of training. I did more than that for my fucking customer service call center job. What are they training that does it's absurd.
So I just want to point out that we as police officers, we don't want to kill people. That's not our objective. We want everyone to go home safely. I've been in multiple situations where
the problem is we've seen from multiple police officers that is not true. That there are multiple police officers who, while it's not explicitly stated, is clear from their actions that yes, they do want to kill someone. The officer who killed Rashard Brooks, yeah, he wanted to kill someone. He saw an opportunity and he took it. That's the only explanation for him opening fire when there were civilians in cars downrange when Brooks took off. You can't tell me he was afraid for his life. Are you kidding me? The dude was running away scared. He had a taser. And we've been repeatedly told how tasers are not lethal weapons, so why was he scared for his life if he didn't have a lethal weapon? And again, the incident started with Brooks saying, "I don't have any guns or anything on me. I'm clean. I'm good. Blah blah blah." So he didn't have, and they also searched him. So they didn't have any real reason to believe that he was armed or dangerous in that way. So while you may not want to kill anyone, and this guy may not want to kill anyone, and this guy may not want to kill anyone, there are police who do. I don't know if it's possible to screen them out or find those people, but that's something we need to work on, is making sure that the police who respond to these actions don't want to kill anyone.
I've had my gun on pointed at somebody, and I'll point out one example. There's a drunk guy behind the wheel, stopped at a green light. He has a gun right there in the passenger seat. He keeps reaching for his gun, keeps reaching for it. And thank God that I didn't shoot him. I could have legally shot him. He was so close to picking up that gun and pointing it at me. We carry a shotgun, a rifle, and a pistol. These are all weapons that the general public has access to as well. If they have access to it, we have to have access to it.
I can remember a couple of the incidents that caused the police departments. It started with the FBI in Miami, where they were outgunned back in the 80s. And that's what caused, I believe, to go to automatic handguns as opposed to revolvers. And then it was the LA bank robberies where those officers were outgunned. And with all the school shootings, and at the same time, 9/11 hit, and a lot of the local jurisdictions wanted to be able to maintain law and order in case of a terrorist attack and not be outgunned in that circumstance. So I agree with you to a regard that we have become, I wouldn't call it militarized, but we have become more prepared in law enforcement.
Man boob soy boy with the, well, I guess we can call that the nihilistic take. Thank you for the follow, I think. I mean, I don't know what else to say, my dude. No lives matter. You're all cunts. Fuck you. Cool. Enjoy.
To handle any situation. There are times, and we can throw out numerous, including George Floyd, that had nothing to do with militarization. That was a bad cop.
I wanted to go back to something that was pointed out earlier about SWAT. 80% of SWAT raids, according to the ACLU, are by drug offenses. And I do agree with Ethan that it's not needed. The SWAT team is not needed for a drug case. You don't need to shoot someone for dealing drugs, for selling drugs, or for using drugs. I don't think that's really appropriate.
This is a big reason why the war on drugs is still as strong as it is, because police unions, uh, it's a big part of it's a big easy part of a police officer's job to find drug dealers or users and take them in as a collar. So they push to keep drugs illegal. This is why the legalization of marijuana in many places is a huge win, because that takes a huge market for arrests and citations away from the police in those areas, because they can no longer grab people for selling or smoking weed. Okay, I see what we're dealing with here, man boob soy boy. Neo-Marxism and Jewish supremacy. Okay, have fun.
I definitely do think race is an issue
What exactly do you think neo-Marxism is, man boob soy boy?
when it comes to these raids. Statistics have shown that Black and Hispanic people are likely to be incarcerated for these things, and what Black people make up only 13% of the population, and Hispanics make up about I think 18%.
I support defunding the police.
Okay, I'm guessing all three of these are gonna stay lit, and he might, but these two are definitely going to go dark. Wow.
And just to make sure everybody whose camera is on, you are in support of defunding the police.
Okay.
I don't know enough about it, and we do not know what that would look like to defund the police. I'm gonna learn from you guys what your opinions are on that and how you see defunding the police happening.
At the YJC, we're a no cop zone. So we don't work with police. We don't allow police in our space. And we've been calling for 5% of law enforcement's budget, which is a campaign that we have that's about defunding the police. And we do practice transformative justice. We're creating this thing called community alternatives to 911.
Transformative justice can be seen as a general philosophical strategy for responding to conflicts akin to peacemaking. Transformative justice is concerned with root causes and comprehensive outcomes. It is akin to healing justice more than other alternatives to imprisonment. Yes. God, I love this girl. She seems to be someone who really is working hard in the protesting space, because this is a big part of it, is that our justice system as it currently exists, our penal system as it currently exists, basically just takes people who commit crimes, low level, high level, doesn't matter, and basically puts them into a system where they learn to be better criminals. And it ends up being that's the only way for them to basically, especially if you're a minority, a person of color, who gets arrested and convicted of a crime, you do your time. Basically, you can either get out and become a bigger criminal, because that's the only way you can get your money, or maybe you will uh, be able to work as some sort of symbol of reformation, even though there's not a great deal of reform work done in prisons. They're basically shoved in a box, especially in these for-profit prisons, and made to serve out their time. There's not a lot of work done in most places to rehabilitate and reform these people. A better system would be one where, yes, maybe we do still need to isolate these people, but while they're being isolated, while they are serving their sentence, they can see psychologists and therapists and work with people like that to fix the root cause of their behavior. I mean, a big root cause of a lot of criminal behavior, particularly in minority communities, is a lack of access to opportunities. The jobs in the area are shit, and this is not unique to those areas. Everywhere has shit access to jobs for the most part, or shit access to the education and opportunities necessary to get a good job. This is why this is why the fact that a number of prisons have stopped stop giving access to police, or to police, to university classes to their inmates, is a huge problem, because that means that people are going in there, and a number of people would have gone in there before and come out with a university education and been able to use that to better their life. Instead, they're coming out with a criminal education and using that to become better criminals.
One where different folks that have different like backgrounds, as in like medical backgrounds, um are able to support with like trauma and sexual assault, mental health. When we think about crime, I think that the worst thing that this brings up sometimes is like, well, what about the murders? What about the rapists? What about school shootouts, right? If you're getting to the root causes of things, those surface things might or might not expand. And I think using that, taking the money from law enforcement and again like putting that into schools, putting that into parks, putting that into youth development, youth jobs.
I've heard these plans where people will, I would say, minor mental health crises, neighbor disputes, civil. I'm okay if you defund the police, if that means you're taking resources from policing, shifting it to those other departments or whatnot, and having them handle it, so I can go out and get the murderers and the rapists and this and that, the robbers and all that stuff. It's just rhetoric. To me, is important. When you say defund the police, okay, I'm gonna take that as literal, and then what the hell does that mean, other than taking away our budget, having less cops, but we're still dealing with the same amount of workload that we were doing before?
This is disingenuous. No one defund the police is a soundbite. It's a slogan. It's something you can chant or put on a sign to state your purpose, because adjusting the budget to allow for a greater diversity of resources for dealing with societal ills doesn't fit on a poster that well. Like, yes, we're talking about creating organizations whose purpose is to help with these root level causes so that there is less crime, so that police don't respond to every domestic disturbance or other issue that doesn't need armed, militarized wannabe soldiers showing up to try to resolve the issue. There are a lot of things police respond to which basically ends up harming the people they're responding to, more than what they're doing is harming society. A big issue is this is one of, to go back to my discussion about drunk driving. One of the big issues is that for poor people, drunk driving is a huge issue, because if they get caught, they have to pay a massive fine. They have to pay higher car insurance if they even get to keep their car, and the time they may spend in jail as a result of it could cause them to lose their job, making it even harder for them to recover. It's this whole big issue. Whereas for wealthy people, drunk driving just has a cost, and if they lose their car, their license, or whatever, they can afford to hire someone to drive them around, or again, just pay the fine. This is why our system basically is set up to let wealthy people get away with crimes and poor people are disproportionately punished for it, because the idea was that by setting the penalty for a crime, instead of just being throw them in jail, have them pay a fine, you make the fine prohibitive. But the problem is that most fines are to the point where it is prohibitively expensive for a poor person to pay it. But once you get above a certain wealth category, and it's not as high up as you may think, most crimes are just, oh, it costs X to do this. Like, I've seen this around a couple of times. The biggest difference between a wealthy person and a poor person was I was with this friend of mine who's wealthy, and he said, we parked somewhere. I was like, you can't park here. I was like, no, it just costs like $300 or something to park here. He's like, yeah, that's the fine. Yeah, that's just what it costs. Like, there's no continuity of it. There's no, they just pay the fine and that's it. And they're not out anything, because they make enough money that throwing that money away for these fines is fine. Which is why I think it would be better if someone is driving drunk, instead of just throwing them in jail, hitting them with a bunch of fines, and maybe making them take a safe driving class, it doesn't resolve the root issue. It may prevent that person from driving drunk again, simply because they can no longer afford to drive, but it doesn't address the issue. Whereas if instead they were met with some sort of crisis response team who is not armed, who takes them to a therapist or other, mental health professional or whatever. Why are you drinking and driving? Why are you doing this? Is there something deeper issue? And it could just be as simple as they just don't respect the law or whatever, in which case that is another issue that would need to be worked with. But instead of potentially ruining someone's life because of underlying issues that they're not dealing with because of our shitty mental health system, maybe we can get people the help they need so that they don't become this danger. Because I acknowledge the danger of drunk driving. I'm not trying to downplay that danger. But I think it's clear that the way they are punished currently SF4 netcode creator. Cool, checks in the mail. But the way they're punished currently does not does not prove enough of a deterrent for enough people to prevent drunk driving. I think that is clear from the data. And it especially does not deter wealthy and powerful people. They have no deterrence.
You're going to burn me out.
So
and again, most people advocating for defunding the police are not advocating for just stripping their funding, but expecting them to perform the same actions. We're talking about removing a number of their responsibilities that don't need what police are good at, which isn't much, and changing their responsibility and creating new organizations to handle those responsibilities in a more positive, helpful way.
Disagree with defunding the police. I do completely agree. You need more money being pumped into these resources, especially in these inner cities. The school system's a joke, and it's all over the nation. You know, why is it that I got to go to a school where I had all these sports programs that were completely paid for, and I had a business club I got to be a part of. These other communities don't have that, and it's not fair. But defunding the police, I also think is a bad idea, because if you just take money away, the problems aren't going to solve themselves immediately. So I think money's going to have to come from elsewhere. I mean, you look at all these monopolies getting away with tax evasion in our country. That's disgusting in itself. Why are these huge corporations getting away with so much? They're getting richer and richer and richer. Meanwhile, the people at the very bottom, the low income, are just going to keep getting stepped on unless things change from the top.
You got to remember that if you want the best and the brightest police officers, you got to pay for it. And also, you start taking away funding from police departments and cities.
This is disingenuous as fuck. Police are already paid very well. What was was it the Boston budget? One of the budgets got released here, and the average salary for police was like $300K a year. So if you're saying that the way police are funded now is insufficient to get the best and brightest, what the hell are the best and brightest looking for? I mean, I could argue that smart people who become police realize how shitty the system is and stop being police. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt here. This has been a fairly good faith discussion so far. I think everyone here is being fairly, until this guy started talking bullshit here, a fairly honest discussion. It's not that the fact of the matter is, from the things I've read, the police don't go after intelligent people. They don't try to recruit intelligent people. In fact, I've seen reports that people who score too well on entrance exams aren't allowed in. They want people who will be able to understand the rules and laws they're supposed to enforce, but not think too hard about it. Not think about what that issue means. Cops complain about how they have to deal with X, Y, and Z situations. They shouldn't have to, but when you suggest moving the funding to other sources, they throw it. Exactly, collusion. Yes. Exactly. True.
Those extras that really help, like the advocates and the assistants and those social.
Now, I do want to state that it's entirely probable that in smaller municipalities, police are not paid as well as they would be in Boston. That's almost certainly true. But this idea that we need to pay, that police aren't paid enough to what? Let's do some sleuthing real quick. Average salary for police officer. So in a random city of Davenport, Iowa, an average police officer salary is $47 to $63K a year. I have some experience in Davenport, Iowa, and I can say that that is a very, very good middle class income. It's not, Bentleys and private jet, obviously, but it's more than enough to raise a family on. This is a perfectly reasonable amount of money. And the average salary is $35 to $90K a year. 35 is above what is considered the median living wage of about 31, 32K a year. So what this is telling us is that police officers are making from a living wage to a very comfortable wage pretty much anywhere in this United States. And that's before you add on all the extra jobs and overtime pay. Oh, yeah. They can take private security jobs. Hell yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah. Police are able to. Police have a very comfortable income. It's a very secure, comfortable income. And again, from what I've been reading recently, it seems like there's not really a lot of oversight on overtime. One popular tactic the police like to use is when it's getting close to the end of their shift, they'll find someone and pull them over and try to uh, generate an arrest or some other action like that, because then they get to soak up a bunch of overtime doing paperwork for that action and any others they might have taken during the day. And also, when a cop shows up to court, that is also overtime. So I don't know how those numbers were generated, the 35 to 90K a year. I don't know if that. I'm assuming that it is looking at the actual income of a cross section of officers and then averaging or median. So there's definitely some overtime factored in there. But police make a good living doing what they do. And keep in mind that 35K is likely rookie officers just starting. And there's plenty of room for advancement because they have a very strong fucking union.
Workers, they're going to be the first to go, and it's going to be the patrol officers that stay. 2011, 2012, Governor Christie took away money from New Jersey. Camden was forced to cut 20% of its budget. The Washington Post did a great article on this. And what happened is they had a strong police union, so they went in and got rid of the police by taking away the whole department, brought in a county sheriff's department to cover it. Crime went down because they did the whole broken window theory. But what did go up was excessive force complaints. So the numbers are always skewed, but at the end of the day, it took the activists and it took the.
Wow, I've never seen someone twist Camden to be anything but a success story for defunding police, because that's what it is. Camden basically dismantled their police system, and I need to look more into exactly what happened in Camden, but crime went down. And if police brutality, if excessive force complaints went up, then that's not necessarily an issue of the lack of funding. That just shows the training was shit, as it is in every other precinct, which also deals with high crime rates. So, how? If the government, she isn't allowed to work overtime and is forced to take extra days off, there's a budget shortfall. Yeah. Well, collusion. It's because people view police as this essential force that must be able to operate at all times and has to take care of everything no matter how long it takes, and doesn't view other important, especially government jobs, as similarly essential. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
The citizens working with the police to get both the crime down and to get the use of force and the police officer complaints down.
Now I think Dorian hit it spot on, because if this was to occur, maybe relocating these resources elsewhere where people won't always have to feel like, oh, I'm gonna call the police. You know what? Every situation, we got Karens up in Manhattan calling the police on black men for bird watching and doing normal things. Like, police should not be the first ones to call for every little situation.
That's true. There's a lot of situations where there's not currently a system, a group to call if there's an issue, but there should be, and we easily could create such a system.
There are more good cops than bad.
Oh boy. Okay, we all know the truth. There's more bad than good. I think he's going to go dark here. I think he's going to disagree here. She's almost certainly going dark. I don't know about these two. She's actually been she said a lot at the beginning, but she hasn't said a lot lately. Um, I'll bet these two are going to stay lit up. So my guess here is dark, lit, lit, dark. I had a feeling she's going to stay lit, and I don't know. I think he's going to go dark. So dark, dark, lit, dark, lit, lit. Let's see.
There's about 800,000 cops.
Wait, did I misunderstand the question? Because that is the exact, basically the exact opposite of what I expected to happen. These people all believe there are more good cops than, okay, sure.
In America, right? Take me, for example, I usually handle about 10 to 20 calls. So on average, there's about 8 million police citizen encounters on a day-to-day basis. I don't think that a majority of us, or even half of us, are going around just messing people up, kicking people's ass, all that stuff. We're just trying to do the best that we can. Yes, there are some people out here who have nefarious reasons to becoming a cop. I don't think that's a majority of us. I see my partners on a day-to-day basis. I know my partners. I see how other people interact.
So the issue is that these good cops don't do enough or anything about the bad cops. Like that's where the issue comes in, is that these people aren't doing anything to help with the bad cops. So even if the majority of cops aren't going around trying to beat people up, aren't planting evidence, aren't doing this, aren't doing that, they're not doing anything to stop the bad cops, to prevent the bad cops from harming other people. That's where the issue comes in, and why we say that even if the majority of cops aren't doing this, they're not doing anything to stop the bad cops who are doing the things we dislike. And so they are indirectly, sometimes directly, helping those cops to get away with it. And again, this is ignoring how police form up when it comes time to when police officers do get caught in public doing bad things, how the police will come together to defend them, how police investigate their own misconduct and almost universally find no issue.
See from other states. I just have to say that most cops are good cops. Most cops are good people. That's just my experience. I can't speak for everybody else, but that's my experience.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just like in the light we are right now, so many bad cops are being portrayed on this. And it's just like people are just seeing them all the bad cops. For myself, I've had more good experiences with cops than bad experiences. I can't say for everybody, but that's just been my experience. And I generally do not think all cops are bad or most cops are bad. In fact,
I think it's important to point out too that law enforcement is one of the only professions where uh, one incident we all get lumped into it. A teacher sleeps with an underage student. We don't go around saying all teachers are bad. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that
That's because if a teacher sleeps with a student, they get punished for it. But the only way police get punished for killing people or sleeping with, raping suspects or people they have in custody is if there is a massive outcry to get people to stop paying, to get punishment for that person. Remember that before Minneapolis burned, they didn't even fire Derek Chauvin or the other cops who were involved in George Floyd's murder. Breonna Taylor's killers are still working on the force. This is what we're talking about. Individual cops may be good, may be bad, but they all contribute to a bad system which continues to let offenders get away with their actions.
law enforcement is one of the only professions that can restrict people's rights. If you look at the numbers alone, majority of police are having great, if not positive, encounters with citizens.
I do have a family member who is a cop, and of course, I think she's a good person, but I think the whole, well, not all cops are bad, again, it takes away from the conversation. We all know that not all cops are bad, but the conversation we're trying to have is not all cops are good either. I had a friend who was raped by the cop. I mean, that cop is not in jail now. He's still working. She tried reporting it, nothing happened. I just think, again, it's like a deflection strategy.
The reason why we get like, what the fuck, right? What did I do? It's because rhetoric. I'm not going to tell anybody how to speak, but rhetoric is very important, right? So when you say cops kill people, I've never killed anybody in my life, right? So you automatically have brought me into that conversation. So what? I'm like, no, not all cops bring people. I'm not trying to.
I'll grant him, a minority of cops kill people. I'm not saying a majority of cops are out here killing people. It is a minority of police officers. But the problem is when an officer does that, when they cross that line and kill someone, they don't receive punishment for that. Again, we can point to a number of examples of people who of police officers who killed someone, quote unquote, in the line of duty and received no punishment, even though it was clear that they reacted with excessive force or they. I mean, again, Breonna Taylor is like the example right now, mostly because we actually got the Floyd killers, the Floyd officers indicted. Breonna Taylor was sleeping at home. Police entered in a no-knock raid looking for someone they already had in custody in plain clothes, and she was shot 8 times in her bed. I can't think of any other profession where you can do that many wrong things and not at least get fired, if not face charges. But police are different.
Go away from the subject matter, but when you do a broad thing like that, because like I said, I'm like, damn, what?
This is not about good cop, bad cop. It's about that the system needs to be dismantled as a whole. It's about remembering how this system was built, the system of policing, right? And it was built to catch slaves. It's about the fact that you all work for institutions that continuously show up to hurt, harm. I was arrested at the age of 11. And even just thinking about that, right? Policing and young people being arrested and in juvenile halls and all those things, right? All these systems. That's what policing is. Like, you're on the wrong side, and I'm also thinking about I have a daughter too.
Based.
And her father was severely beat by the police, by LAPD, went to court. The cop was not convicted of anything, but it was brought up that this specific officer had been also beating different people. Yet he was still in the field, he was still working, he was still getting paid. Policing as a whole and the system that is is like grabbing onto systemic racism, right? Because when you think about who are in these prisons, who are in these jails, who is in custody, you're talking about Black and brown people. So it doesn't matter if there's the Black cop, is the Latino cop, is the white cop. Like, if
Look at how bored these guys look. It's like, yeah, we know all cops are racist, blah, blah. Her whole point is that the system is racist. It doesn't matter if individual cops are good or bad, they are all participating in a bad system. That is the whole point.
You're seeing the injustice going on in the departments, because I know you all see it in different levels. And you're not saying anything. And what can you really say, right? And that's I'm not done talking, Dorian.
I know, but
no, I'm not gonna stop talking for you. I'm not. Because Like, you all want to cover each other's asses or whatever, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, it wasn't one cop, it wasn't 3 cops that killed 948 people. It was several cops that have not been indicted by the district attorney or by anyone else. So why are we gonna keep
Yeah.
the little narrative around good cop, bad cop? No, the whole system needs to go.
And see, this is the exact thing that I was talking about. I don't want to go back and forth, and I didn't mean to cut you off. That was. I apologize for that. But the problem is, you keep speaking for me, right? So now you said you know that. That's exactly what you said. You guys know this. You do. Like, you don't know nothing about me. You don't know anything about me. I don't know anything about you, so I would never assert what I've gone through in my life on you. That's what you just.
I'm not talking about Dorian because the question was not around you. The question was around good cop, bad cop.
That's what you said, though. That's why I said rhetoric is important, because that's what you said. You said you all three of you guys know. All three of you guys know what I'm talking about.
Law enforcement, because that's what the question is centered around.
You can't. That's why I said rhetoric to me is most important, because we're.
This is where we often get into an issue where we have people critiquing the system and members of those systems feeling like we're critiquing them as individuals. No, this Dorian guy seems like a very a pretty cool guy. You know, I don't know if he has you know, I don't know anything else about him other than what he's done here. He seems like a pretty cool, level-headed guy. The one white dude who's still a cop on this panel has said that if he witnessed someone doing like what Chauvin did, he would shove them away and get them off of him. You know, that's all well and good, but they are still part of a system which defends these killers. That is the issue. That is what we're trying to critique. I don't care about individual cops. An individual cop can be good or bad, but they're still actively taking part, as long as they're police officers, in a system which systemically harms people. It hurts individuals in society and doesn't hold the system doesn't hold the individuals who do that accountable, which makes the people who prop up and perpetuate that system, at least in part, responsible for those harms. That is the issue. That is the critique.
Having a conversation, you and I, Gloria, you everybody is here is having a conversation. So when you say you, I have never seen this before personally. I've never seen something like that, right? If I did, you damn right I would say something. I don't give a shit if I lose my job, okay? Because I got in this to do the right thing.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid when I see the police every single time, because I don't know what that interaction is going to lead to. I don't know if you are having a good day, because you all have more power in terms of power dynamics, whether you can escalate and whether because now I'm a threat for whatever. Maybe I might have said something. Maybe I have something. Maybe I made the wrong move.
You may be afraid because your experiences, that's fine. I'm not taking away from anything, but there's also other viewpoints, right? Not just yours. I respect your viewpoint, right? I would actually recommend, because you're afraid, to go on a ride along to see what we do. You may not want to. I got you. I'm just saying, just to see, because people think I'm 30 years old, right? I've only been a cop for 7 years. That doesn't take my sense of humanity out of me just because I became a law enforcement officer, right? I'm not taking anything from anyone.
I think
Yeah. Oh God, this is so frustrating. Because they're both making good points, but he's ignoring that she is critiquing the system and how the system impacts people, and he's taking it as a personal attack or critique on himself. I don't give a shit about individual cops. You know, an individual police officer can be fine. He can be a good guy. He can be a loving person. But when we look at the police system as a whole, it is a racist, misogynist, homophobic, transphobic, horrible system which causes harm. And it needs to be changed.
Country will make it through these divisive times.
I mean, I think we would. I know we will, because this is a stepping point for our country, and people are waking up and wanting a better.
This is one of the weakest end questions they've done before. I think our country will make it through these divisive times. Yeah, I agree. I think our country will make it through these divisive times, but I think it's going to change things, hopefully for the better.
Better nation for everybody, for all of us. At the end of the day, there might be bloodshed, there might be lives lost, there might be tears cried or whatever. African American people in this country been through 400 years of slavery. We've been through Jim Crow. We've been through the '60s. We've been through everything. So we definitely gonna make it through.
I think it starts with what we're doing here. It starts with communication. I think it turn off TV a little when it comes to being manipulated by the news, and things kind of die down. But what it really takes is not forcing somebody to see your view, but to actually communicate and come up with a solution, working with both sides. And I think if we do that, then we'll definitely be stronger from it. It's what we don't know that scares us. But when we open up and see other people's points of view and see how other people live and their expectations, I think we can get a lot farther.
I was a part of a protest with, they're called the New York City Students for Justice, and we're talking high schoolers who are 17 and 18-year-olds. They're organizing their own protests that thousands of people attended. It gave me a lot of hope, because I'm like, these kids are going to get far. I definitely think they're the future for our country.
You guys saying that gives me hope, because I guess I'm cynical. I think that I think we're going to destroy each other before that happens. You're right. The younger people, the younger generation are the future. And like Will said, it all starts with conversation. So I'm going to change my answer now.
So I'm sorry to be so negative, but I think all of us, law enforcement and the communities we serve, I think we want to work together. We need your guys' support to do our jobs. But the fact of the matter is, there's so much corruption out there at the higher levels, and I don't think it's going to change. I think the more that we communicate on our levels is really important, and it can somewhat keep the peace. But as a whole, things are not going to change until the higher ups start doing something about what's happening in America.
Yeah, I'm just really I want to acknowledge the fact that if these systems don't change, we will continue to be uprising. We will continue to have protests, have demands, have solutions.
This is why I say I do think we will survive, but there are going to be changes. For one thing, we are seeing significant push by a popular push to change the way policing works. And we're seeing high profile major changes being made in places like Minneapolis and LA that I think are going to be sort of test grounds for these changes. And moreover, not related really to policing, but it's kind of being exacerbated by the whole situation. I think that this pandemic is going to change the way we look uh, uh, at at employment, at working, at how people work. Um, the 40-hour work week has been outmoded for 30 years at least. We've been working the same number of hours for less pay and seeing more production, more productivity as a result of it. So I do think a lot of changes are coming, but we need to work together as people, as Americans, as citizens, to make sure that the changes are positive ones that help as many people as possible and don't just reinforce the business interests of the wealthy class.
And I was really just remembering all the moms that I've heard had their loved ones or their sons killed by law enforcement. And what would they want to see? What justice do they deserve? Right? What justice does George Floyd deserve? Does Waukesha Wilson? Does Breonna? Right? Like and it's so many. What justice do they deserve? This is not gonna stop until we have change.
You guys are all great. I appreciate you. I'm going to ask that you all log out and just kind of say goodbye to each other and close it.
It was
May
great.
everyone of you.
My guys.
For real.
Can I ask Gloria something though? Oh damn.
Everyone, you guys be safe.
So yeah, as often happens with these Jubilee, there was not much accomplished, but I think there was some good information there. Yeah, especially was it Gloria? Was that the base as fuck chick? Let's see. Yeah,
I'm 24 years old.
yeah, Gloria. This one, she obviously knows what she's talking about. She's got a lot of experience with it, and she was the one who was. This guy Dorian tried to distort it, but she was making clear she was critiquing the system of policing, and not not individual police, because again, individual police can be fine, but they still contribute to the violent, racist, status quo protecting police force that grew out of slave catchers and union breakers. So that was fun. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like, share, and leave a comment because it helps me. Subscribe and ring that bell to help you. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.